Hijra, moving to an Islamic country. I can't say for you, but I can say for myself. After October 7th, there has been more than a few discussions at our dining room table to wonder, is it worth it to move from a country like the US or Canada to an Islamic one like Malaysia? Enter Sana Saleh. Now, you've likely all seen and heard Sana because she is one of the most popular Muslims online, with millions of people who follow her. But importantly, her family also documented their journey moving away from Canada to Malaysia. And today we are here to talk with Sana. Assalamu alaikum, Sana. How are you?
Walaikum salam. I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing super well. Now, you are joining us from Malaysia, is that right?
I am. That's why it's nighttime right now.
Oh my goodness. Well, hey, thank you so much for making it work. And what time is it there for you?
It is 9:15 p.m.
Okay. Well, I hope the kids are tucked up in bed and they're not being disturbed by your conversation. And just jumping right in, right? Sana, can you think about what led you to making this decision to leave Canada and go to Malaysia?
So we actually visited Malaysia about a decade ago as a brand new married couple. We came here on our honeymoon. So initially we were thinking, let's do Bahamas or Mexico or, those traditional kind of spaces where people go on honeymoons. And then a friend of my husband said, why don't you try Malaysia for your honeymoon spot? And I was like, where's Malaysia? I was so naive. I didn't even know where it was on the map. I had heard of Indonesia, hadn't heard of Malaysia. Anyway, we ended up coming here and we fell in love with the country. And we knew at some point that we always wanted to come back here. But then we had kids, 3 kids. And then October 7th happened in 2023. And after October 7th, we had a really tough conversation and we said, why don't we take the kids to Malaysia in 2024 and see if they like it and if it's a place where we think we could move to. So we brought our kids, we brought my mom with us, and we trialed it out. We trialed it out last year for a few months, and we just fell in love with it for so many different reasons. And yeah, we just made the niyyah and we asked Allah and we said, make it easy for us to make hijrah. Open doors for us so that we could get a visa to move here, and Allah opened every door possible, and here we are.
Well, I want to double click on, you said post October 7th, we began thinking about this. Tell me more about that. Like, what was it specifically about Canada that made you say, hey, you know what? I think it's time that we try somewhere else.
So after October 7th, there was a lot of politicians in Canada that made it very uncomfortable to speak up about Palestine. Our local premier, which is kind of like the governor of Ontario, which is where we were living, he called the Palestine flag a Hamas flag and kind of labeled it as a terrorist flag. And, me and my husband were very outspoken. We've always spoken up for Palestine, and we go to these protests often. And just hearing that just made us feel unwelcome. Even though I was born in Canada, born and raised, my husband born in Canada, my kids, like our entire family, we'd been there for so long. My husband is actually like an 8th generation Canadian. Like his forefathers came to Canada before it was even a country, before it was even established as Canada. So it was at that time where we just thought to ourselves, we're like, if we don't have the freedom to feel comfortable living here anymore, I think now is the time that we make that conscious choice on if we should stay or if we should go.
I'm curious, like, were there any thoughts in your mind that were holding you back to say, no, we should try to stay here and try to make change, or no, we should stay here because, this is home, or anything like that?
Absolutely, 100%. Well, all of our family is still there. So my husband's side of the family is still there. I have my dad there, my sister's there, my siblings. All of our friends are there. Our business is still there. So there was plenty. We have so many roots in Canada. And so for us, it was not a small decision whatsoever. And it was scary. It was a really scary decision to make. But we really I feel like Allah put it in our hearts that this is just something we had to do. And He kept giving us signs, like little signs along the way that we were making the right decision. So ultimately, we put it in His hands.
It's so interesting, right? Because what you talk to post October 7th, it sounds like belonging, right? This idea of, well, given this premier of Ontario, the way he talks about Palestine, the way that, he makes Muslims feel, it makes it feel like, oh, well, you know what? I don't belong here. And that's, by the way, super real, right? I remember post October or post 9/11. That's how I felt as a Muslim kid growing up in America. And it was tough. And I also think that it's a basic human need, right? Especially for kids, but even as adults, you have to feel like you fit in, right? There's a group of people and a place where you feel like you can sort of let your hair down and be your authentic self and things like that. The other side of it is to say, well, the US and Canada, these are like democracies, meaning if you want to make change, create that change, right? And, there are there are opportunities to if you're not happy about it, well, then just get involved and you become the premier or something like that. Did anyone ever say, no, Sana, don't go, and you should stay for these reasons or anything like that?
So some people had sent us messages saying that we should be staying there and that we weren't doing enough and that we were running away, essentially, and that if we were to stay, that we could make changes within Canada and that we need people like us to stay there. And yeah, the running away part, I wouldn't argue against that, but at the same time, I feel like we have seen Canada progress in a great way, and I do feel like it's done wonders, since I was a kid to where it is now, for sure, 100%. It's changed a lot. But I feel like we're at a standstill and we're kind of going backwards now, all of us. So we were super welcoming to all these refugees and immigrants and, diversity. And then now we're just starting to trickle backwards a little bit. And I personally feel, as a mom of 3 young kids, that it's just not an environment that I want to stay in. And social media is a fantastic thing, so we can still make changes.
All right, so let's move forward. So you go to Malaysia, you spend you go there for a summer first with your kids, and now you're there.
So when we came here last year, we came with the intention not just to vacation, but we kind of wanted to get a feel of what it would be like to live here. So we, rented essentially an apartment and stayed there for a month and then moved around. We moved to different apartments and different places so we could kind of get a feel for what it was like to live there. But we immersed ourselves in things. We joined some homeschool groups because we're a homeschooling family. We went to different programs with our kids. We cooked the local food. Didn't want to, order in all the time like you would when you're on a vacation. So we tried cooking just to see how we liked the food here. Just really tried to get a feel of what it was like to live here. We, got in touch with a real estate agent and tried to look at different houses and see what the housing market was like here. And honestly, at the end of our stay, we stayed for, I think, 3 months. We just felt at home. And that's when we knew we were like, let's just go home and pack everything up. And that's exactly what we did. We went home, packed everything up, every single thing. There's things in this room that are from Canada. So we tried to bring all of our essentials, all of the sentimental things that we have hung on to for all these years. And now it feels like home.
Okay, so I have to ask some of these big questions.
Mm-hmm.
Have you guys had to go to the doctor?
Yes.
What's that like?
So the medical system here is really different compared to Canada. Obviously, in Canada, when you go to see a doctor or you go to the hospital, you're not paying anything out of pocket because we have universal coverage. So here, when you go to a doctor, you're paying every single time that you see the doctor. You're paying to see the doctor. You're paying for every blood test, every ultrasound, every x-ray. I've experienced both private healthcare and private clinics, and the service itself, fantastic. I've never experienced such great healthcare before. However, it comes with a price tag, especially for foreigners. And we don't personally have insurance quite yet. So yeah, it is a little bit on the expensive side if you go to private hospitals. But going to clinics here, incredible. They have something called 24-hour clinics. So it kind of prevents you from going to the ER. You know, when you have sick kids in the middle of the night and the last thing you want to do is take them to the ER and sit there for 4 or 5 hours. These
Right.
24-hour clinics, you walk right in and they're always empty. And you can just walk right into the doctor and they can do everything there. They can do ultrasounds, blood tests, everything that you need just in that clinic. They can even administer IVs if you need. And
Okay.
their services are really, really good.
I love that. All right. So now let me ask you this. This is all so interesting to me, okay? Because it's like, oh my goodness, Malaysia, like good weather, Islamic country. And I'm like, I don't know, feels too good to be true or something like that. I don't know. This is in the back of my mind. This is how I'm feeling about it. And I'm curious, like, are there any unexpected challenges, right? When you move there, things that you perhaps didn't realize that now, after having lived there for some time, you've begin to realize?
Yeah, for sure. Number one thing for us is craftsmanship here is very different. So, for instance, rooms and floors are not square like they would be. For instance, my husband was installing curtains and he's installing them and used a laser level and everything is perfect. And then he goes to put the curtains up. They're all the same size and they're just like kind of all different sizes. So the construction here is definitely not the same as it is in Canada. Another thing we've noticed is because we are foreigners and visibly foreigners, contractors do try to scam. So, for instance, we had to get a toilet replaced, and one guy was charging us $5,000 Canadian to replace that toilet, and another guy was charging like $400. So it was a big difference in price. So they kind of just look at you and just tell you a price. That's kind of irritating because there's no like standard across the board is what we've noticed. So you just really need to be careful with who you hire here and the trust factor, you know. So things are just very different that way. And then there's cockroaches and lizards here and geckos. That was a bit of a shock. They just kind of come into the house whenever they feel like it. So we've kind of become professional. Well, not me, but my husband has become a professional at, you know, killing cockroaches.
What do you, and you know, my family, we took a vacation to this place called Destin, Florida, and we saw a gecko. And I was like, what do you do with a gecko? Like, do you just try to get them out or do you treat them the same way as a cockroach?
You
Like,
know,
that's always the question.
in the beginning, we were really nice. Like my husband was like touching them and like putting them back outside. And then we quickly realized they just make themselves at home. They just like pop into the window. They just come right through the window. Like you can see windows behind me. They just come right through the cracks. They're so small and so thin. So now he just uses a bow and arrow and just goes and they're gone.
Oh, wow. A bow and arrow. Allahu Akbar.
But the kind with the rubber on the end of it. So it's not like a painful blow. You know what I mean?
So when you came to Malaysia, one of the things that I heard you talking about was values, right? So you said, hey, look, the values in Canada, you know, raising your children, different than where they were, you know, when you were a kid, right? And that played a big role. Do you feel like on that lens, there has been a difference in sort of the values of the culture and that sort of experience of where you're bringing your kids up?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like that's one of the big reasons why we homeschooled in the first place, because we wanted to protect our kids from whether it's bullying or all of this new LGBT stuff that they're promoting in schools. And then moving here, June was Pride Month, but it didn't exist here. And we were like, wow, when we were back in Canada, it was a whole month and we had to kind of explain to our kids what it is. And it was just this whole conversation we kept having to have with the kids. And here, it literally doesn't exist. It doesn't happen here. So Muslim-friendly environment. Everywhere you go, you know, women are wearing modest clothes. Even when you go to water parks, even the non-Muslims here are still wearing T-shirts at the very least. So just the environment in general is a lot more Muslim-friendly.
I'm from Minnesota, which is a state in the U.S. And I like to think that truly, like every state in the U.S. is very different. I mean, this is a huge country, 350 million people. The people in Minnesota are actually really good people. Insofar as, you know, honest, patient, gratitude. The type of folks who I'm actually really like happy that my kids are growing up around in some ways, right? Now, ain't no one perfect, But when I assume, I've never lived in New York, but I'm like, oh no, we're not New York, right? We're not hustle bustle. We're not materialistic as a just community.
Mhm.
But I've also been to other Muslim countries,
Mhm.
right? Like Pakistan, for
Yeah.
example, or even the UAE and things like this. I'm curious on your reflection of, do you find that the values that you see among the people there, like being a whole lot different than the values among your Canadian neighbors?
Yeah, absolutely. I've noticed that this environment is so family friendly. Almost everywhere I go, I will see dads being extremely active with their kids. Something that I honestly didn't see a lot in Canada. Like here, you'll see dads baby wearing. Like they've got the carrier on, they got the babies in there. Um, just everywhere you go, families, family gatherings, family dinners, family lunches, families at playgrounds. It's just the environment just feels so wholesome. And that's something that we have really, really appreciated about the culture here.
All right. So for someone who's listening to this and they've been having the debate at the dinner table saying, oh, let's go move to Malaysia or Indonesia or Bali. No, I'm joking. I don't know if anyone's talking about going to Bali, but what advice would you give someone around making the right decision? And I guess also, do you think this is the right decision for everyone?
I don't think it's right for everyone. It's not an easy process. It is very stressful. And I have personally, with my own two eyes, seen people that have done it and then they've moved back because it was too difficult for them, being so far away from family. I'm very grateful that I have my mom who lives with us. So the transition was a lot easier for us. But the biggest piece of advice that I can give anybody that's pondering it is to trial it out first, just like how we did. And I know that's not budget friendly for everyone, but truly, I think you should just take some time, even if it's a few weeks, go and live in that country as if you're not on vacation. Don't stay at a hotel. Stay in an apartment where the locals are. See what it's like to go grocery shopping. See what it's like to go to the libraries. See what it's like to do, local programs with your kids, and see if it's honestly something that you can do. And if you are comfortable and if you do feel like that trip, you felt something, then for sure, Allah will inshallah make the journey easy for you.
You said something. You said that the process is actually a pretty tough process.
Mm-hmm.
Can you double click on that? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what is the actual process? And you even talked about like getting, I don't know if you need citizenship or a green card. I don't even know what that means, right? Like,
Yeah.
what is the actual process?
Yeah. So a lot of foreigners that are here don't do it, in my opinion, in the wisest way. I advise against doing this, but there are a lot of Canadians and Americans that are here, but they are here on a tourist visa. So every 3 months, they literally have to go on vacation to Thailand, to the Philippines, to Indonesia, and then they come back in. So every 3 months, they're having to leave. That's not always great for your budget. That's not great for pulling your kids out of school. That's not great if you're working. In my opinion, that's just it's not the wisest way to come here. The second thing is how we did it is a legitimate visa. So we had to get a work visa, which normally would take only a few months, but for us, it took almost like 6-7 months to get. So it is a stressful process. There is a lot involved in it. There are certain visas that you can get here. You can open a business here. You can, get a job here. You can invest in property here. So there's a couple different options, but it's not for everyone. And that's the thing is if you're planning on coming here just on a tourist visa and leaving every 3 months, then there's that stress. Like, what if you can't get back in? What if they stop you one day and you have your whole house here? You have all your belongings here, and passport control is like, why do you keep leaving and coming back every 3 months? You know what I mean? It's very stressful. So coming here is not an easy process, and you definitely have to get your ducks in a row, in my opinion, especially if you're uplifting and uprooting your entire life and your family. It's best to do it for the right reasons and through the right channels and having an actual visa.
That makes a whole lot of sense. Now, you opened the conversation by talking about this trip that you and your husband took when you got married. Were there any other countries that you were considering, or was it always like, oh, if we're going to go somewhere, it's definitely going to be Malaysia?
At that time, we were freshly married, and Malaysia was the only place that we had traveled to. After that, we started traveling after we had kids, and we had considered at that time the UAE. We actually did a trial run there last year, and it did not. Allah gave us every sign to avoid that place. Every single thing went wrong. Everything you could think of went wrong. And subhanallah, Allah just did not want it in our playbook. And as soon as we came to Malaysia, He was like, "This is the place for you." So subhanallah.
Okay. One of the things I obviously think about is money. I'm curious in terms of cost of living, right? If you were to compare the cost of living where you were in Ontario, Canada, which, I mean, our listeners are from everywhere, and, you know, Ontario, Canada is likely different than the US. And even in Ontario, if you live in different areas, obviously it's different. Real estate in Canada is crazy, yada, yada, yada. Okay. But if you were to, like, just at a, you know, 10,000 foot level, compare the sort of cost of living in Canada compared to Malaysia, like, how would you describe it?
Oh my gosh, it's so different. You can live like a king here, especially if I'm like actually not kidding. Especially if you're making Canadian dollars or American dollars, it's times 3 here, and you can live in luxury. You can eat out multiple times a week here. You can do all the extra things that you cannot do in Ontario. You cannot always go to the movies. You cannot always go out to eat. Rent, bills. Like, we were shocked when we first got our water bill. It was $3 for our water bill. I was like, well, is this a joke? And I called them. I was like, oh my God, this is like actually like $3 for our water bill. Our cell phone plans are insane in Canada. You know, we pay about $200 for our cell phone bill there. Here it's like $25 for both of our phones. So it's so different. It's so different. And the quality of everything is incredible. You can find every store here in the malls. The malls are next level here. And, you know, although the houses do have some minor defects, they're still very beautiful houses. Way cheaper to afford living here. I have a friend that just moved here from Canada, and she worked out a 5-year lease, and it cost her $1,000 for a single landed house per month.
Oh, wow.
Canadian.
So like a full house.
A full house for $1,000 in a brand new.
Are we talking
she's
3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms?
3
like,
or 4 bedrooms. 3 or 4 bedrooms in a brand new gated community, and she's the first person to ever live in the house. It's brand new. Brand new.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So she did work out like a deal with the landlord because it was not furnished. It didn't have air conditioning and minor things like that. But regardless, I mean, and you cannot find even just an actual room in Ontario for that price. You cannot. It's impossible.
Now, you mentioned that a primary reason why you're doing this is because of your kids, and you're concerned about, you know, the environment that they're growing up in. And you've already mentioned some things. For example, the fact that, you know, their neighbors are dressing modestly, for example. I'm curious, when you think about the Islamic upbringing of your children, moving to this country, how else has that been impacted?
One thing that I absolutely love is, I mean, not just the fact that modest clothing is a big thing here. Everyone's very, very respectful about it. The second thing is the ability to find halal food everywhere. You never have to question a restaurant. You never have to wonder if this thing is being fried with this thing. In Canada, we're constantly asking questions. Can you just make sure that you cook my pancakes on a different grill? Or, you know what I mean? You're always wondering, is there bacon being cooked next to my pancakes? And just all these little things. But the biggest thing for me is prayer. We can be anywhere here. You can be at a gas station. You could be at a library. You could be at a doctor's clinic, or even the mall. They have something called a surau here, which is like a musalla. And they are everywhere. And anytime it's time to pray, you hear the adhan, you go pray. Like in Canada, you cannot do that. You have nowhere to pray. We were praying in parking lots. We were praying in stairwells. We were praying sometimes like in the most awkward places that you can think of, just to get our prayer in the midst of people walking around us and it not being a clean place. And this is such a beautiful thing, just being able to find a space to pray. And our kids now seeing that prayer is such an integral part of life. Because it's not just mom and dad doing it, it's everyone doing it. Everyone is stopping and everyone is going to pray. It's such a big deal.
I'm curious on two things. One is there's something about identity, especially when you're a minority.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in high school and I was one of the few Muslim kids, being Muslim then became like a salient part of my identity, meaning it was
Mm-hmm.
like pretty front and center, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sort of the way to think about it is if I was the only male in a environment where there was only females, now all of a sudden I'm thinking about the fact, okay, dude, this is weird. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
guy, and I'm thinking more about it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And in some respects, there can be value in that, right? Because um, it allows an appreciation of that part of your identity. And sometimes contemplation, well, hold on, like, let me actually understand why I'm wearing hijab, or let me understand why I'm fasting, and things like this. I'm curious, do you feel as though in this environment where you're steeped with other Muslim people, um, are there any downsides to that? I mean, like, and I could be just like theorizing, and it just could be all hogwash. But
Mm-hmm.
like, in any way, like, is it weird to be just like a Muslim among a sea of other Muslims? Where in Canada, it was like, okay, well, hey, this is actually a form of difference for me, and maybe I'm more cognizant to it.
Mm-hmm. So I actually grew up in a very small community in British Columbia, and I was the first Muslim to wear hijab in that community of 60,000 people.
Subhanallah.
I was the only person.
Subhanallah.
So I definitely stuck out like a sore thumb. So I've been there. I know what that feels like. And although it was a very scary thing, it was also a beautiful thing for sure, because people would stop me and ask questions. But at the same time, there were times where I thought I had a target on my back. And so that's one thing that I really love about being here, being in this sea of Muslims, is my kids will never have to have that feeling of being scared. And I just feel like we just live in such a different era. It's not like the 90s where when I grew up, where you don't really hear of hate crimes happening, but now it's so common. They happen in the GTA in Toronto all the time. Hijabis getting their hair, their hijab ripped off in the middle of fast food joints. It happens so often. And that's one thing that I feel like I won't ever have to worry about here, is my kids ever feeling like they don't feel safe just because of their identity.
How have you gone about making friends?
So I love the online community. I met all of my friends here online, and we basically have a big WhatsApp group of expats that are either moving here or in the process of moving here. And we have a whole community here from tons of people from Ontario, actually, and America and the UK. And it's been fantastic. We've really made a good little village here of expats.
So do you feel like most of your friends are, or like a significant portion are expats?
Yes.
And tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, they are. I do have some local friends as well. I do feel like it's a little bit on the harder side to make friends with local people, just because we are different. I mean, we had a totally different upbringing, whereas the expats here, some of them are literally from my own backyard in Ontario, so we're able to relate on so many different levels. Our kids are around the same age. And it's been so nice just having people to lean on, people that I can talk to, people that I can relate to. And then I also have the local friends here that'll literally do anything for us. And they've really helped us, with the ropes for everything, anything and everything. They're so reliable and so kind. And the people here are very, very sweet people. They're willing to help you for everything.
MashaAllah. Your family's homeschooling. My family homeschools as well, but I know a lot of families don't. And you mentioned, you've got friends who are coming in, they've got kids as well. Do most of your friends also homeschool, or, are there a fair amount who are also in the school system? And I wonder if you have any, if you can shed any light on, what is the school system like? And is that a potentially good option for families, or how you think about that?
So I would say 9 out of 10 for the families that I'm friends with here do homeschool. But they also did homeschool back in, the US and Canada as well. My local friends that are here, their kids are all in international schools here. So the international schools teach international curriculum, whether it's UK or America or Canadian curriculum. And they say really good things about the international schools here. So they definitely have a really good reputation. I don't know much about the public schools here, but I do know that the expats that do register their kids for the private schools here, the international schools, you are able to get a visa for your kids and your family, actually, if your kids register for school. So I've heard good things. But in terms of homeschooling, I just feel like the families that have always homeschooled, we just love the flexibility of it, and we just love what it brings to the table for our family. And that's why we've just continued.
Sometimes you appreciate what you have when it's gone. And I'm curious, now being in Malaysia, what are some of the elements of your life in Canada that you miss?
I miss my best friends. I miss seeing my family. I miss just being able to just get on a flight and see them. Now I have to go 24 hours in order just to see them. Like, it's far. Malaysia is very far from Canada. It's very tough. If anything ever happens, like my best friend just gave birth just a week ago and I'm not there. So that's really tough. That's really, really tough. Another thing that we really miss is the roads. The road system in Canada is incredible. If you're driving on the highway and you miss a turn, you just take the next exit and you're good to go. Here, if you miss a turn, then you're on the road for another 20 minutes just to make another turn. The highways here are crazy. So that's another thing that I miss for sure.
Sana, do you feel like you belong?
I do. There are definitely times where I feel like I am still a foreigner because there are benefits that only locals get here and foreigners don't get the same benefits. So that part is a little bit tough. I feel like we're always just going to be labeled as a foreigner. I don't think we're ever going to be titled as Malaysian at any point. So that part's hard. But I do feel like I belong in terms of community. I love it here. I love it here so much.
Do you think there's any chance that you come back to Canada, or do you think this is sort of home for you now?
I think we'll definitely always keep that door open. I don't know if it's going to happen anytime soon, but we do still have family there. So I can definitely, say that door is always going to stay open, and Canada will always still be home. Like, we are always going to be Canadian. That's not something that we would ever give up. Even the people that try to get citizenship here, the Malaysian government doesn't let you hold dual. So you have to basically denounce your citizenship in Canada. And that's just not something that we're willing to do, especially when we have family there. We have roots there. That's where we were all from. So Canada will always be home. I just feel like maybe we'll just call this an extended vacation where we have an epic house and all of our belongings with us.
MashaAllah. Sister Sana, thank you so much for your time here. This has been so valuable. And I think, it's one thing to talk about it and think about it, but it's something entirely different to hear about someone who's gone through this journey. And, I think I even texted you last year or 2 years ago. We were planning on spending some time in Malaysia just as a family to get, part of the experience. I don't know what the future holds, but I think, your example is one that I think a lot of people are talking about. And I'm really excited to, share this conversation with our community.
Well, inshallah, if you guys are ever in this neck of the woods, you give us a shout. We would love to host you guys.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.